Hello, my name is BJ Perez. Welcome to Tapping Into His Treasures. How is everybody today? Well, it's a bright day. I wish it was a little brighter in here. Our theme today is going to be, He gives us back double. Who gives us back double? God, of course. When we give to Him, He gives us back double. Would you agree? I'm sure you would. I was reading a portion in Genesis the other day, and it really touched my heart. It was about when Joseph had been imprisoned, and after that he was released from prison and made the governor of the whole land, and he subsequently saved everybody from starvation. Because of his wisdom, he was able to save the grain and make it last for 7 years. Well, anyway, his brothers, his 11 brothers, 10 of whom went to Egypt to get food, were confronted by Joseph, and after the whole story, he finally revealed himself to them. And Pharaoh himself made an invitation to their father Jacob and all of their people to come to Egypt. And he told them not to worry about leaving their land, that he would give them back even more. And I want to read it to you verbatim, and then we'll talk some more about it. It's in Genesis 45, 17 to 21. And it reads like this. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers this, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan. And get your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best in the land of Egypt, and you will live on the fat of the land." Now, doesn't God always give us the best? He surely does. "You therefore command them, saying, you do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father to come." And finally, in 21, and the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons as the order of Pharaoh permitted, and gave them provisions for the journey. See, God doesn't even forget the provisions for the journey. He's so good. Father, bless the rest of this show in Jesus' name. Yes, Lord. So yes, it just tells all about God's character. When we give to Him, He always gives us back more. And just imagine yourself in that situation. I'm sure when Jacob heard that from his sons, it made him happy, it got him excited. But at the same time, we all know that feeling about leaving something behind. It's like a bitter-sweet type of thing. All that he was used to, his land and his people, you get up, you like where you keep things. We all do that. And especially when we're haphazardly going for a coffee in the morning, So we want to know where things are. And we feel comfortable. We feel at home. We're relaxed. And that's how Jacob was. And so he had to leave a lot, but he got a lot in return. He got more in return. It reminds me of an elderly couple that I know at this present time contemplating taking another senior rental, living where they are just to be with some of the church members. And, I can put myself right in their place because I know that feeling. Ultimately, people follow God and they go His way, wherever He wants them geographically. But most of us still go through that whole struggle. And, with them, imagine this yourselves if you're in that age bracket. My friend, the wife is, she's a backdoor person. And where they are now, there's a back door. And I know there's not a clothesline, birdhouses and things like that. She puts that syrupy stuff that you put out for those little buzzy things. What do you call them? And she watches the birds from out back of her house, and other things. She's not very far from the laundromat in the community building, and she doesn't have that far of a walk. And where they are contemplating going, there's only one washer and one dryer. And so that's a lot to think about. Am I going to have to wait? in a long line of people in order to get to the washer and dryer. I'm not going to be able to fit into my schedule the way I normally do, the whole 9 yards. Let's see if there's anything else they're contemplating here. Oh yeah, this one's a big one too. They have 4 rooms now, and they may have to decrease that to 3 rooms in order to get a place where they want to go in the area. And when you're used to having an extra room, let me tell you, that would be a big sacrifice to give it up. It really would be. And and there's other drawbacks too, besides those that I mentioned. So they're being plagued with them. But if it's God calling them to relocate for His purposes, what they give up will not amount to a fraction of what God will give them on the other side. Would you agree, Christians? Of course you would. I've been there so many times over, and I hope you don't get sick of me saying it. But I'm saying all of it to say that I can attest to what God does on the other end. Leaving my last apartment to come here, and I love it here, down here near the New Hampshire border, I do. But when I left, they had just installed these 3-in-1 wall units for heat, air conditioning, a dehumidifier. I got to write that down so I don't forget the next time. And a fan dehumidifier. Okay. And that unit would have brought my electric bill down 50%. It was a great little unit. But anyway, now, because I moved, I have to pay an extra $100 in the rent, in which the electricity is included. But if I were there, I would have been paying $50 less than I am now. So, and then other things too. One of the churches was providing me as a service like $100 worth of groceries a month. I had to give that up. We had a great big community room, lots of goings on. It was like a family there, all my friends, and most of all, I had to leave my family. And it wasn't easy. But God has replaced all of those things that I gave up with fellowship with my church body here, body of Christ. And they are people that speak the same language as me, one in the Spirit with me. And it's worth more than anything in the world. So you don't measure up. And you can't measure up to God anyway, because He outgives continuously. Now, I knew this was here, and I forgot to look it up. The Bible verse that tells us that God will give us back when we get to heaven. Our pastor just mentioned that in church today. When we get there, he says, what we're doing here is building stones for what we're going to get there. And he said, He's going to reward us here even before we get there. We're going to get rewarded for things that we do for Him, for the kingdom. But it doesn't stop there, that when we get there, He's going to reward us there too. It's just so hard to comprehend. And I know you're probably like I am. When I do things such as what I'm doing now, and burning all the discs and labeling all the mailers to send off some TV programs all over the place, I don't do it because I want a reward. But I just do it because I know I'm in the will of God doing it. But He's such a good God that He's going to reward it. He is going to reward it. And I know what I'm going to do with my reward. Just throw it at Jesus' feet. Same as you're going to do. I know that already. For with the measure you use it, excuse me, will be measured. Here we go again. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. I got to put a comma there for the next person who reads this when I die. For with the measure you use it, it will be measured back to you. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Let me say this. Don't ever take your pastor for granted. His job, parentheses, vocation, is a difficult one. It's rewarding, like we've just talked about, yet it's difficult. One doesn't just give up his time, and energy to be a pastor. He gives up his life. Have you ever thought about that? His phone rings off the hook or enough times to wake him up during the night. All the time. And he's got to be available for not only young couples getting married, but the aged, terminally ill, young people, all kinds of situations. He's got to be available for spiritual counsel. Yes. Pray for them and appreciate them and thank God for them. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. And we know the story of Job, remember? He lost everything except his life. He lost everything. His children have all these sores. People would get disgusted just looking at him because of the way he looked. I think some of his property too. Weren't his cattle destroyed and all that too? Yeah. So anyway, he lost a lot, but then God taught him in that time when he was going through all that. And toward the end of that, chapters 41, 42 maybe, 42 is the last chapter. He gave him a new family with those 3 beautiful daughters, and he gave him about twice as much as he had before. That's God's character, and I'll do the same for you. I don't know where I found this, but it's, "O prisoners of hope, today I declare that I will restore to you double." It's always double. Sometimes it's triple. What types of volunteer work have you done or are you doing now? What's the best part about it? Oh, I wish I could be sitting, you could be sitting in my living room with me answering these questions as I ask them. What's the best part about your volunteering? It's probably the gratitude you get from investing in a person's life. Do you invest in scouting, Cub Scout, Boy Scout, Girl Scouts? Brownies? They have brownies anymore? It's wonderful just to invest in a young person's life, isn't it? Well, I can still remember years ago when we had a Girl Scout troop in the school I went to. It was a Catholic school. And I could see her face now. I can't remember her name. Mrs. Frazier. She was doing a really good job. The size of the group grew, and then she couldn't do it anymore. And she said I would do it if I could get a helper. And I went home and I begged my mother to please do it so that the troop wouldn't have to fold up. And my mother, God bless her, she did it just to save the troop. And my mother was a pretty busy woman. She was smarter than I was because she took some time to herself. And she visited with the neighbors on their porches and things like that. But other than that, she was a busy woman taking care of her family. And later on she went to work. But she did. She stepped forward and she became the assistant scout leader. And she invested in our lives, you know, at Girl Scout camp, teaching us how to cook and just so many things. And it stayed with me, and I hope it stayed with all the other girls in the Girl Scout troop all through life too. So if you're a volunteer and you're giving your service to and your time to the community, I applaud you. Kudos. When a person gives of themselves, they give back to society. They invest in the citizens of the future. That is all good. When a person gives to God, he or she is not only investing in other people's lives. When a person invests in God's kingdom, he or she is investing in eternity. Hey, stop and think about that. Investing in all eternity. That's like awesome. I was watching on the news the other day about this elderly man. I think he was 80 or more than 80, and he had been missing for 2 days. And unfortunately, during that time, it rained and poured, even hailstones. The weather has been so unusual. Probably all of America. I know what's going on out in Colorado right now. But even here in the Northeast, I'm telling you, nobody has seen weather changes, weather patterns the way we have this summer and this fall. So anyway, this elderly man was out in it and lost, and he was presumed dead. His poor family. and they had many, many people searching for him, even in the bad weather. They didn't stop the search in the hail. And there were dogs searching, with sniffing and everything with people. And there was this one lady, she was a retired lady, not young at all, and she used to work for the Maine Ordnance Service, but when she retired, she volunteered for the Maine Ordnance Service. So on her own, she went out with her dog, and she is the one who found the man, and praise and thank God the man was alive. He was lying down on his back in the woods on a path, and I don't think it was that far from his house, but somehow he just forgot which path to take back to his house. So she found him, and relaying this just to say how much she's going to get back from that experience. She gave energy and she gave her time, and certainly it wasn't comfortable out in the rain, pouring rain. Well, she had an umbrella, but still, she got soaking wet. But when she found him, can you even imagine, after 2 days, hundreds of volunteers looking for this man, and she's the one who found him. Can you imagine that feeling that went all the way to her heart and soul? She got back double what she gave, because she will never forget that as long as she lives. And not only that, maybe the man would have died if he wasn't found when he was found from exposure. So yes, she got back double, because God gave her his character for that little bit of time. Many of you have given up a lot to follow after the Lord. He's given up much more than we gave up for him. Don't ever forget what he's given up for us, his one and only Son. So, does God take our small sacrifices lightly, or our big sacrifices lightly? Not at all. He has them all written down in the book. Remember, what's the last book of the New Testament? Malachi? I'm getting the number 16. Is it chapter 16 or another chapter with verse 16? Anyway, it's in Malachi that he records everything that has to do with him. How many of you have peace? How many of you have perfect peace? Giving us peace is one of the ways that God rewards us. The peace that he's given me is worth more than silver and gold. He also gives contentment and inner satisfaction and a whole lot more. Do you possess those things today? I hope you do. I could go on and on about getting back double. Oh my gosh. I could sit here and talk for a couple of hours about what I've gotten back. Giving grace to people, even when you don't feel like it, because it is a godly thing to do, brings grace back to us. I like to read that again, because that really touched my heart when I read it or heard it. Giving grace to people, even when you don't feel like it, because it is a godly thing to do, brings grace back to us. There's testimony about visiting elderly people that I just want to share briefly here. And it has to go with this Grace. Hey, I just thought about something. My mother's name is Grace, and it has to do with her. How do you like that? Okay, so my mom, when she was, my sister and I, she lived with my sister the last 5 years of her life. And then we switched her back and forth like every other 2-month period. But anyway, toward the very end, when it just got to be too much for my sister, she went into wasn't a nursing home per se, but it was similar, a healthcare center or something like that. So anyway, I wasn't able to go down and be with her every day like my sister was. I could just get down occasionally, but when I did go down, I would stay like the whole week and spend practically the whole week in the nursing home, and took her out for lunch to diners and things like that. So anyway, what I did here, as crazy as it sounds, I heard somebody say this like 40-something years ago, and it just kind of stuck with me. and I implemented it in my life. I would go and visit elderly people here, people that I didn't even know, in nursing homes and that I would hear of. And I did it with the intention that if I did it for somebody here that I did not know, that God would send somebody to visit my mother and spend time with her in Connecticut to give me back the grace that I was given to somebody here. And I laughed because my mother's name is Grace. Was Grace. So there's a principle there. Can you see the principle? And yes, God did give back the grace. A few years ago when I started out the TV broadcast, I think I shared about Heather, my friend, that when I did spend a week with my mom in Connecticut, my first day there in the recreation room at the health center, my mother and I were sitting at the table, and the activities director was playing the piano, playing the old tunes for all the folks sitting in the wheelchairs and sitting by the table. And everybody was singing along and just enjoying her. She had this wonderful personality, like a contagious personality. And my mother and I were in the back of the room, and Heather was at the other end of the room at the piano. And right when it was finished, I think it was just about finished, a lady who was sitting not too far away from where I was sitting said Heather, at least I thought she said Heather, pertaining to the one playing the piano, the activities director. And I looked at her and I said, Heather. And before she said that, I was saying to myself, gee, that activities director looks kind of familiar. Like, where would I know her from? I'm not even from Connecticut, you know? So then when she said that, it just made me think even more. Could I know that person from someplace? So by this time, the activities director is making her way this way and comes up almost to where I was. She looked at me and I looked at her. And simultaneously we said, Heather, BJ? And we just ran at each other and embraced. We knew each other. Because when I had come back from overseas in 99, I lived with my mother for 8 months because my brother passed away, and I took care of him before he passed away. And my mom couldn't be alone, so I stayed with her for 8 months. And during that time, I went to the church, a finished work church near where my mother lived in Connecticut, and brought my mother with me to some Bible studies and everything. But I met Heather when the ladies got together for a retreat, and we rented some cabins or something, and had times of prayer and lots of fun games. And that's where I met Heather, and we had a real blast together. So this was like maybe 10 years before, or maybe 8 years before. So I had not seen Heather in all those years. So God planted Heather in this health center as the activities director the same time that my mother was there. My mother wasn't there very long, probably June to December. I think she was only there 6 months. And when I had to leave to come back home, Heather said to me, don't you worry, I'll take good care of her. And she did. She did my mother's nails. I sent Heather by snail mail. Otherwise, I gave it to her there, one of the two. I kind of think I sent it to her. Cassette tape of my songs that I had recorded. And she brought in a small tape recorder of hers and played that tape for my mother very, very often. And it was so nice to have my mother hear her daughter sing those Christian songs, godly songs. And that was very special. She would do my mother's hair. She would check in on her all the time. So my mother got royal treatment. Royal treatment, and that was a direct result of my visiting people here that were lonely and didn't have anybody. And God did on the other end just as I had asked him to do. And He gave to me and my mother through Heather much more than I gave to any of these people that I visited. So that kind of wraps up the title of the story. He gives that double. Acts 20:35. I have showed you all things, how that so laboring you ought to support the weak, and to remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. When you give something from your heart without expecting anything in return, you release a force that will, I don't know if it's a force or not, but you release something that will bring back satisfaction. It'll bring satisfaction back to you. And it may come back to you tenfold or 100-fold even. And trust me, it's not the universe that's giving it back to you, like some say. It's God himself giving it back to you. I was going to read another testimony about, I gave my time and energy to this 86-year-old black lady in Baltimore one time, and it's very, very funny. I wrote it down with all her expressions and everything. It's a really funny story. And how I was so tired, my back was aching, and yet she kept calling me to take her here and take her there. And she didn't hurry with her errand. She just stretched out the time. One time I didn't get her home till almost midnight. But I don't have time today, so I'm just going to end by reading Isaiah 54, 14 and 17. Terror shall not come near you if you're one of the Lord's. And I thought that was a wonderful promise. And that's what he gives us, protection. And 17, but no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against you in judgment you shall show to be in the wrong. This peace, righteousness, security, triumph over opposition is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, those at whom the ideal servant of the Lord is reproduced. This is the righteousness or the vindication which they obtain from me. This is that which I impart to them as their justification, says the Lord. So there it is right there. He imparts it all to us because he's a God that gives back double. Thanks for watching. God bless you and God bless yours. God keep you and God keep yours. Till next time, bye-bye for now.